Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
The Healing Through Love podcast with host Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson would love to acknowledge Global Glamping Charities Incorporated for generously supporting this podcast. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all of its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org. The Healing Through Love podcast with Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. Our guest, Donna Arnold, in episode 39, discusses how to succeed in avoiding addictions.
So in summary, we've got listeners listening today and you're wondering, okay, so where do I need to go from there? If you do recognise that there is a challenge and it is before 7, reach out and see a professional. And even if you know what the challenge is, don't try and do this by yourself. No. It's not, Dr. Google's not going to sort this one out for you. It's just going to open a big can of worms. Do see a professional. A wellness practitioner is who we advocate. And just know that these practices are going to be daily parts of your new existence. There is life at the end of the tunnel, and happiness is your reward. I love it. Donna, this has been a lovely conversation.
The Healing Through Love podcast with Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to Healing Through Love podcast. I'm your host, Charlene Lynch from charlenelynch.com. Healing Through Love is here to help victims and survivors of family and domestic violence find their way back to living a more fulfilling and meaningful life. We interview experts and survivors who share their personal stories and offer advice to those who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their healing journey. As well as the Healing Through Love podcast, we also hold an annual Pamper Day here in Adelaide, South Australia, for survivors of domestic and family violence. Our local businesses come together and pay it forward by providing their services and resources for a day of much needed love and affection. Think day spa on steroids. It's amazing. Now, we're looking for organisations with similar values, so get in touch with us if you can help us here locally in South Australia or interstate or even abroad as we expand the business. And you can reach us on hello@HTL, so that's Healing Through Love, australia.org, and that all those emails will be in the show notes and also in the description. Now, today our very special guest is Donna Arnold. There's a way. Hello, Donna. There's a way to minimise damage and ramifications of carrying emotional pain and heartache. After living as a victim of emotional abuse, Donna Arnold talks candidly about her decade or more of her experiences and how she avoided addiction, and so many others have succumbed along the way. And Donna's going to share her personal story. Hello, Donna. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Such a blessing to connect with you. And you're in sunny Queensland.
I am, and it's still relatively warm up here, which is good.
I love it. So now, Donna, you are now a practitioner in your own right, but your story led you to where you are now. And if you're open to it, it'll be great to share with our listeners and our viewers, if that's okay, your personal story.
Yeah. It took over 5 decades to sort of realise what I needed to do. And it was only a couple of years ago that the penny dropped and I was walking around just saying, I wish I knew this information when I was 15. So my passion now is to help those who, the kids and, the teens, that there is this way that can help yourself to change their trajectory. So whether they take that information and use it straight away, or whether it just sits in the back of their mind until they're old enough and they're ready to take it, it's going to change things. Because what I've realized is it changed, obviously, my life and also my children's life. Our relationships would have been completely different. So I just think if one child, one person hears this information and benefits from it, that's just a bonus. So yeah,
I love it.
yeah, exactly. So at 5 years old or 6 years old, I was sexually abused by a church minister. So, and there were 3 separate occasions, and it was something I didn't remember. I blocked it out. But as I got a little bit older, I was in probably my early teens, I started to get flashbacks at the point of hearing specific words like religion, prayer, church. And it was things like that. And I would get these same particular flashbacks, and I would recognize the car. I would see myself in his car. So basically what had happened, because, by the time I got to 50, it all sort of fell. It opened up, and I realized what had happened is that after church one day, Sunday, my parents went home. I don't know why. They took my brothers, and I stayed back. I said, at the church, I'm sort of figuring to help tidy up, pick up the toys after, Sunday school and church and whatever. And that's when the first one happened. And I remember going home and just feeling that he was in the car. My brothers weren't in the car, but I was so embarrassed with these flashbacks. I get this last picture, and I would just feel so awful inside. And that, and I would sort of go through that, and then life would go on. Both parents were alcoholics. My father was a Vietnam War vet. I found out at his funeral by another military person that he was back in the Vietnam time. He was similar to the SAS. But they didn't have SAS, and he did that sort of thing. So I can understand why he was an alcoholic. My mother was an alcoholic. I learned that she was sexually abused as well as a young girl. So she had no self-worth. And of course, we now know, it's illegal to drink drive. But what I suffered from was just a repetitive trauma of my father going away for the weekend. And we would have to drive 3 hours home every Sunday. And of course, we went after the session, and he would drive home drunk. And I was just terrified. I would just lie in the back of the station wagon in embryo position, just hoping that we didn't collide with anything. Didn't realize, though, I was tucked right at the back. Something from the behind could have hit me, but it was just every 3 months. It was the same routine. My mother left when I was 11, so, she wasn't around for me to grow up as a young teenager. And then when I was 14, I fell off my father's pedestal, so he disowned me. And it was a case of, it was just a reminder, constant reminder. And people that knew the family would tell me that he sort of didn't acknowledge me as his daughter. And of course, he passed away. We never spoke again. And when I was 20, because my parents had separated, my mother died. She was a victim of domestic violence herself. She lived in Townsville. I lived in Brisbane. It wasn't easy, no mobile phones or anything like that. So I never had closure she never had a funeral. I never had closure. And then my sister took advantage of the freedom of choice, freedom of information. And 20 years later, after my mother's death, she actually got the coroner's report and it was detailed. And of course, my sister was only a baby when she left, but I found that very traumatic. She had bruising of the heart. She died of a ruptured spleen, but the report showed she had previous bruising of the heart. It also incorporated a witness's how he constantly bashed her and kicked her the night before she actually passed away. So it's just been a case of this constant repetitive stuff. And it was I was at went to a psychologist only a couple of years ago, and she diagnosed me with PTSD and depression. And she said, did I know I had that? I said, no, why would I know I had that? You just got on with life, and that was what it is. You just got on. But there were things that from the sexual abuse from the church minister, I was terrified of churches. My two sons had to get married. I've got 5 grandchildren that had to be christened. And it was just traumatic going into the church. I would sit there with one side saying, run away, and the other side sort of saying, it's just a building. It's just a building, And I didn't realize that was not normal. I just didn't know, but it was just a case of as soon as everything was over, I was out of there and not really understanding it all. But I had an amazing experience only a couple of weeks ago. So during seeing the psychologist, I said to her, I'm not going to sit here and just talk. I want hypnotherapy. I want to do things like that because I believe in that sort of thing. So she decided to try EMDR. Have you heard of that? For PTSD sufferers. So she was doing that. I was also going out and going to hypnotherapists. I also have past life regressions done, believe in that so much. And constantly working on myself with my meditations and my own self-hypnosis and little practices and things like that. And so it's basically been 2 years working on doing from this perspective. I actually did a camera course. My children bought me a voucher, so I've just turned up in Brisbane City and learnt how to use the phone with the camera sort of perspective. And we were at Anzac Square, and then we went a couple of streets over, and we were in front of St. Stephen's Cathedral, massive old church, beautiful church. And I love taking photos of churches, but never go inside. And I was standing out there, and I was looking at it, and I thought to myself, I've been here before. I was here last year. Why didn't I go inside? Didn't worry about it. And then she sort of said, okay, this is a bit of a play. You guys go out and just take photos of what you want. And I just walked in, wandered around, went to this end, went to that end, took lots of photos. And it wasn't until the next morning I went, my God, there was no fighting. There was no noise in my head. There was nothing there. It was peace. It was absolutely peaceful. Whereas every other time I went into a church, it was a constant fight in my head. So I was absolutely blown away that the results from that, just from some natural alternative therapy has changed my world. I was just tickled pink. I was just absolutely blown away by that. So I'm continuing on my journey. There's so much other stuff that, to uplift me, to look at, build up that self-worth. And the biggest thing is thinking positive. And of course, people say, it's your mindset, think positive, be happy, let it go. Yeah. That's easier said than done. And then I found somebody who actually, I said, well, so what do I do when I wake up at 2 a.m. and straight away all the rubbish and everything, all the negative stuff goes around and around. And of course, it was that very first step. Somebody said, have you got a dog? Have you got a cat? An animal that you love? Someone that you love? Yeah. Just remember loving them. And that was the first time that I changed my negative mind to something positive. So my belief is to expand. We all only got 24 hours in a day. So let's make more and more of our 24 hours in a positive, happy way, as opposed to the negative. So you're just going to level it, get those scales in more of a level thing because we know it's all natural, as you said, we all go through it. And I found it's just that simple step that has changed it. So I remember listening to Wayne Dyer. He said, if you found yourself when you're like going to sleep or something, all of a sudden that starts going in your head, get up, grab something. I've got an alarm going off here. Grab something, just stop your mind from thinking what you're thinking and just change it. Just do something, get up out of bed and then get back to bed, so it's a case of, it's a practice like anything else, like an athlete. They don't just wake up one morning, they're constantly practicing. But that proof of going into that church last weekend or the weekend before just was amazing. So, So, yeah. Yeah.
Listeners, if you're listening today or watching today, And, some of you know the wounds that you've had. They've been physical and they've been in your adult life, so you've been able to remember them. But if they've happened to you before you're 7, there's a really good chance that your beautiful subconscious mind has protected you and kept it at bay. So how would you know if you had these challenges? Well, you'll be getting triggers for other things. And just like Donna said, they won't make any sense. There won't be any reason for them. And this is where you really need to seek medical advice. You need to go to a practitioner. And, we advocate wellness practitioners that do alternative therapies. So anything that floats your boat, you could try hypnosis, you could try RTT, you could try cognitive behavioral therapy. There's so many different therapies that you could try. Tapping, they're all amazing. But try something that's going to give you an opportunity to become the observer of the challenge and feel through the blockage that you've got so that you can give some language to it and put some distance between you and the episode so that you are in that observer language, and then use those tools and techniques so that you can create those pattern interrupts and reform those neural pathways so that you can choose to think differently. Because if you're listening today, everything is possible. Regardless of where you are on your journey, everything is possible. And that is one thing you would have noticed by having conversations with us here at Healing Through Love, is that we speak to survivors, we speak to practitioners, and they all have a similar journey. And they're out the other side to tell you the good news that there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And I do love your idea, Donna, which is one of Wayne Dyer's, which is a pattern interrupt. So to lean into something else so that you can stop that downward spiral of the thought process, pattern interrupt, so then you can begin the upward spiral of the thought process. I love it. I'm a huge Wayne Dyer groupie.
He was a wonderful man. But for a long time, because I'm 62, and for a long time I heard his name, but he kept saying God all the time, and because of my experience I went, nope, don't want to know. And for years and years and years I just refused to acknowledge the words. Even meditation, somebody said as a prayer, I said no, don't want to know that. It was a case of this man also abused me one day at a football game, and of course all this came back after I was 50. And what he did was he took me away it was a Navy versus Army or something like that, the men playing football, and he took me away to get a drink or something, but he didn't take me straight back. He took me around, and we end up on the grass, between the car park, and he's on his knees with his trousers down. And I just remember feeling trapped. I could hear the thud of men playing football, those grunts and moans and body bumps. I could hear, but because I was so young, I didn't know which way to go, which way was safe. So I was trapped there. And from that experience, unfortunately, I have 2 sons. They played football, and I just didn't deal with going to their football games. I've got 4 grandsons, couldn't go to their football games, which disappointed my sons. But it was just a case of I can't. And it's only just recently I realised that, it's the mind that just says, well, from that pain, we're never going to do that again. We will never go to a football game again. We will never walk inside that church again. And you don't have to deal with that. That's how we're going to cope with it. So I wrote a letter to my children actually on this past Christmas, and explained to them why I couldn't go. I can't go to their football games. And of course, I've got one granddaughter. She's playing soccer too. And I went, oh, yeah. So it's, it really does affect. And all this time I never knew why. I just did not understand why until I started facing it and realizing certain things. We even approached my father. My sister said, Donna's getting flashbacks, and she's getting this, and this. And I recognized the car this man drove because it was very unusual. And I knew it was a Volkswagen brand. It wasn't VW, it was a Volkswagen brand. And of course, thank God Google was around when we finally realized. We just Googled and found out it was a what do they call, a Carmen Gear. brew baker or something like that. They're very similar to each other, and that's what he had. So, but my father wasn't letting anything out. And I know my father left Melbourne. He was in the Navy, so we were at the naval base, and he was assigned to Melbourne, and he should have been there for about 3 years, but we left early and came back to Sydney to get me out of that situation. So I know he recognised it, but he would never ever, come back and say anything to me. So it had nothing to talk about it. So
yeah, Donna, and this is a story we hear so regularly. So the tribe has its own pattern of behavior, and it's its own organism to protect the tribe, and people bring their own damage, their own wounds to the table, and we don't know what's happened for them and why they behave that particular way. But yeah, we're moving towards a better world where we have a level of understanding about these things, and there's a level of awareness. And when parents are aware, they need to keep an extra eye on their children. Children need to be in a safe environment, and we have different roadblocks in place now for people who are pedophiles and offenders, and we have a different level of awareness, and that's what this communication is about. These podcasts are about lifting people's awareness around about all different forms of family and domestic violence, and also shining that light at the end of the tunnel to show that there is the ever after.
That's right. Because I was talking to a psychologist, and I sort of said, well, it's terrible to wait for the damage to be done. Why not try and stop it beforehand? So educate the kids to learn a practice like this before they get to that stage. And that way they just need to be reminded, because that's where the problem is. My brother, I've got one that's an alcoholic. I have my other one is a schizophrenic, and he was disowned at 14 by our father. He went and was fostered out. So he's got so much, and he really fell apart. He was the closest to my mother. So when he heard about her death, he put his fist through a phone box, and he was in hospital with a cut up wrist. But he did lighter fluid, sniffed lighter fluid and things like that. So, now at the age of 60, or, not even 60 yet, he's a schizophrenic. So it's just devastating. And I just think my issue, it was a case of, because I used to come home every day and my mother would be drunk at the table drinking by herself, I just swore and I observed the way they physically fought each other and the scars my mother had from my father. I swore I would not be an alcoholic. And I don't mind the drink. I think it was about 30. I started, have a drink every now and then, but I refused to drink alone because that's what I saw my mother do. And so I was just very strong. Tried a little bit of dope, didn't like that, just determined that I was just going to stay straight. My issue with the previous was just I was so angry. Everybody, my nickname was Dragon Lady. I didn't realise. I thought I was just being honest and upfront with everybody, but there was a little bit more to it. So people who knew me 30 years ago can see the change after going through this, meditating and letting go, releasing all these issues. I see them like a suds, massive suds, big bubbles, little bubbles, and work on one at a time, pop, 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 and it's just amazing how much happy I feel. I've never been so happy. I now love myself. I don't rely on a man to love me, to acknowledge that it used to be, if someone loves me that way, I know I must be worthy. Whereas now I realize I'm worthy. I now love myself. I am a beautiful person. I'm not a nasty person. I was just carrying a lot on my shoulders. So I haven't been so much happier. Amazing.
Absolutely, Donna. So in summary, we've got listeners listening today and you're wondering, okay, so where do I need to go from there? If you do recognise that there is a challenge and it is before 7, reach out and see a professional. And even if you know what the challenge is, don't try and do this by yourself.
No.
It's not, Dr. Google's not going to sort this one out for you. It's just going to open a big can of worms. Do see a professional. A wellness practitioner is who we advocate. and just know that these practices are going to be daily parts of your new existence. There is life at the end of the tunnel, and happiness is your reward. I love it. Donna, this has been a lovely conversation and around your story. We've just got a couple minutes left. Is there any closing words you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Well, closing words, I would just like to say I'm celebrating all my hard work of the last couple of years, and I'm never, ever going to stop meditating. Never. I did it when I was about 45, and I thought, I feel happy, I'm better now, and let it go, and realize you have to keep meditating. And gratitude, say thank you, be so grateful every morning. I am so grateful. I am worthy. I am grateful for the love of my children. I am grateful for this cozy, warm bed, and so next month I'm celebrating, and I'm actually following a meditation. I'm going to Italy. Yes.
That's exciting. That's fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing, Donna. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to connect with you today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.